So in the last video, I said that I would be uploading a review on the other manga that I was reading alongside Yotsuba and exclamation mark. I ought to say that. But nonetheless, that didn't quite happen. But the least I could do is provide you all an alternative one which to many extent gave me the similar feeling as the one that I was about to discuss. And although this specific manga didn't strain my intelligence, but I'm afraid of not saying that many times it did disturb my mind with its imagery for the most part and its story. So the manga in discussion is Homunculus, a name that I got familiar with while watching Fullmetal Alchemist. But in here the ones described as Homunculus were vastly different than the ones from FMA. And I'll try to make that clear in just a minute. The premise is rather simple, but the plot is quite twisted, and at times it comes off as a bit not what you would have expected. The story is about how a man develops sixth sense thanks to the minor operation that was performed on him by a medical enthusiast. And thus he was able to conceive the true personality of people by covering his left eye and the inner hidden duality that they actually possessed, which reflected their prior experience and the authenticity of their persona through various interpretable visuals which mounted their body. And here's the difference that I mentioned earlier. The word homunculus was used in the manga to address the portrayal of people's inner being, while in Fullmetal Alchemist, homunculus was used to describe synthetic human models which were created for some desirable purpose. And this was the sole reason why I based my pre-assumption of the plot of this manga, and to be honest, it isn't anywhere close to as I thought it would be. Homunculus is at its best a psychological interface between the protagonist and his inner demon that lurks within him, or in other words, his true self. And the same manga at its worst is a weird, disturbing, strange and ugly piece of entertainment. Now I don't tend to criticize what the author does in their manga if it serves its purpose and not overtly expressed. And in Homunculus, I somewhere felt that I don't need to have such concerns, since the acts and the display of it did indeed deliver for what it was drawn for in some later parts of the manga. Homunculus wasn't the manga that I thought I would read, but seeing many people discuss about it, I thought to give it a try since I was very pleased to seeing some of the panels prior to reading the manga. And this one single panel stuck to me the most, and quite frankly, I did indeed forget the text within this single page. And as I was running down through the manga, and in here I got to mention that Homunculus is a fast read, so you all can easily cover 5 volumes within 2 hours. And the manga at its entirety consists of 15 volumes, so it would be only a matter of hours before you are done with it. So while reading through it, I was in hunt for this specific page, and when I read the text, it all made sense according to the context. The fact that the protagonist questions the meaning of being a human is what the author tries to make us understand through his encounters and his own lifestyle. I wouldn't go too deep into it, so you have to read it on your own, but the fact that I want to mention is that the protagonist by no means is an ideal being who would inculcate a sense of goodwill within you. But contrary to it, he's a big, fat liar with promiscuous personality and an inferior complexity. I mean, that's not something inspiring, is it? But what should I say, the manga at times seems to just mess up a lot in providing a clear distinction on the point of focus, whether should it be on the society or the protagonist. And this was a little off-putting. It just wasn't so fulfilling. I too liked it at first and I was excited that I could just finish the manga in a day, but the feelings were so replaceable and it was hard to connect to the protagonist. Like, if I go by the story and the protagonist being just a character, well, that works quite well, but in personal perspective, it didn't make any difference to me, like what Welcome to NHK made me feel, but that might be me. So I wouldn't make that a huge down factor. Apart from the story, which to be honest, as I said, was a little complicated and at times didn't make any sense, but it was the art that made me stick to it till the end. It was a lot like Rainbow as for how the surrounding was drawn. The facial features weren't as outstanding as Vagabond, but wasn't far from it. And the double spreads did really capture the essence of this manga, and that was the vivid display of how each thing blended in each other, which was very much apparent in Oyasumi Punpun, but at times it was little jarred, like the drawing didn't mesh well. Well, you would understand once you start reading it. Anyways, while reading Homunculus, I was like, what's next? And the least that it was it of being kind of a guilty pleasure manga. but with unsatisfactory execution. I mean, if I had such OP power, I feel I would have conquered the world by knowing how to read someone just by a glance at them. But the protagonist, considering how he was, didn't make any considerable difference in his own world, but was stuck up with himself, and that too was not very convincing to the reader. I purposely made this video short since I feel I don't have much to say, or probably that was all that I could have said. So read Homunculus. It is good, but not something that's worth the score of 7 or 8. As I said, the themes in here were very constricted and convoluted, but even then I somewhat enjoyed it. So that was all about Homunculus, and so if you like this video, be sure to subscribe and ring the bell so that you don't miss future manga videos. And zap!